Ancient Rome was built on military strength, strict discipline, and an unforgiving legal system. Mercy was rarely an option, whether you were a deserter, a criminal, or simply on the wrong side of power. Justice was swift and brutal. The Romans didn't just kill their enemies, they made a spectacle out of it. Public executions were held in arenas, military camps, or city squares, drawing massive crowds. Some were purely about spectacle, designed to entertain while delivering a harsh lesson. Others were carefully crafted to fit the crime. If the Romans were known for one thing, it was their ability to make punishments fit the crime. And for those who committed the most unthinkable act, killing their own parents, the Romans reserved a fate so bizarre and horrifying that even seasoned executioners might hesitate. It was called Poena Cullei, or punishment of the sack. In Roman society, respect for one's parents was sacred. Killing a mother or father wasn't just a crime. It was an insult to the gods, an attack on the natural order. And the punishment? It wasn't just death. It was ritual humiliation, terror, and agony all at once. Once found guilty, the condemned was sewn into a large leather sack. But they weren't alone. Inside the sack, with them were 4 living creatures: a snake, monkey, dog, and a rooster. The sack was tied shut, sealing the person in complete darkness, trapped with these frantic, clawing, biting creatures. If the shock and suffocation didn't kill them, the terrified animals inside might. And then came the final step. The sack was thrown into a river, weighed down by stones. It quickly sank, dragging the condemned and the animals into the depths. There, in total darkness, as the sack filled with water, the person drowned in terror, struggling against the very creatures they had been sewn in with. Unlike other execution methods, Poena Cullei wasn't about public spectacle. It was about erasure. A parricide was considered so unnatural that they didn't even deserve a proper burial. By being thrown into the water, they were symbolically erased from existence, washed away like they never lived. Over time, different Roman rulers modified the execution. Some removed the animals and simply drowned the criminal in a sack. In the Roman military, discipline was everything. A single act of cowardice or desertion could put an entire legion at risk, and Rome had no tolerance for weakness. The punishment? Fustuarium, a brutal execution where the condemned was beaten to death by their own comrades. This was not just a method of execution. It was a public lesson. If a soldier abandoned his post, fled from battle, or even fell asleep while on guard duty, he faced the ultimate price. But instead of a swift death, Rome made sure the punishment reinforced loyalty and fear. First, that a convicted soldier was stripped of his weapons and armor. No longer a warrior, just a condemned man. His fellow soldiers, the very people he fought beside, were then ordered to gather in a circle. One by one, they took turns clubbing him to death with wooden staffs. The first strike might break a rib. The second could crush a limb. There was no mercy, no way out, just blow after blow until the condemned lay lifeless on the ground. But the most terrifying part? Refusing to participate wasn't an option. Any soldier who hesitated to strike risked being punished himself. This turned the execution into an act of forced loyalty, binding the soldiers together not just through camaraderie but through shared bloodshed. If an entire group of soldiers was guilty of cowardice, Rome took things even further. They used a punishment known as decimation, where every 10th soldier was randomly selected and executed by his fellow troops. The rest were forced to watch and continue fighting, knowing they could be next if they ever disobeyed an order again. The message was clear. In the Roman army, fear was the glue that held legions together and for those who dared to run, the only escape was death at the hands of their own brothers in arms. If death by clubbing was brutal, damnatio ad bestias was pure horror. This punishment didn't just kill. It turned execution into a spectacle, a form of blood-soaked entertainment that thrilled the masses. In the heart of Rome, inside the Colosseum and other grand arenas, thousands of spectators gathered to watch criminals, traitors, and prisoners face their doom in the most savage way possible, being torn apart by wild animals. Those sentenced to damnatio ad bestias were often led into the arena with no weapons, no armor, just their bare hands. Some were chained to posts, unable to move, while others were forced to run for their lives, knowing there was no escape. Then the cages opened, lions, tigers, bears, and even packs of starving wolves were released, their hunger driving them into a frenzy. The condemned had seconds, maybe minutes, before they were mauled, their screams mixing with the deafening cheers of the crowd. But this wasn't always a quick death. The Romans, ever the masters of cruelty, sometimes weakened the animals beforehand, ensuring the execution dragged on longer. A single lion might toy with its victim, biting and clawing but not delivering a killing blow. A pack of wolves could take turns attacking, making the suffering last. This punishment was mostly reserved for traitors and rebels who challenged Roman authority, slaves who killed their masters, an act considered the ultimate betrayal. Christians and other religious minorities who refused to worship the Roman gods. Perhaps the most infamous victims were the early Christians. Under emperors like Nero, thousands were thrown to the beasts, their deaths used to entertain Roman citizens. To the crowd, it was a thrilling spectacle. To the condemned, it was the most terrifying end imaginable. Unlike other execution methods, damnatio ad bestias wasn't done in secret. It was a grand event, a day of entertainment where people feasted, gambled, and cheered as men were torn limb from limb. The Roman elite used these spectacles to demonstrate their power, showing that defying the empire meant dying in the most humiliating way possible. But these weren't the only terrifying punishments Rome had to offer. Whether it was being burned alive, crucified, or even executed by molten gold, the empire had countless ways to make criminals suffer.